Assalamu alaikum dear students, welcome to a new video of mine with a new lecture on a new topic, and our today's new topic is related to English movement, English literary movement called Romantic movement. But before going into details, what is this Romantic movement all about? Let us discuss the very term, the very concept of Romanticism. What do we mean by the term Romanticism? Let's discuss this first of all. The very term Romanticism is very elusive and very indefinite kind of a term. No single definition can cover all the aspects of the concept of Romanticism, which is why some of the critics are of the view that this term Romanticism is devilishly elusive kind of a term, right? Over the ages, different critics made efforts to define what is Romanticism, but they failed to define what is Romanticism in a comprehensive manner, in a perfect manner. As a result of that, this term kept on confusing and baffling the different critics over the ages. One such critic is F.R. Lucas. F.R. Lucas wrote a book. The name of the book is The Fall and the Decline of Romantic Ideal. In this book, F.R. Lucas points out 11,396 definitions of the term Romanticism. 11,396 definitions of the term Romanticism. Isn't it surprising that this term is so confusing, so baffling, so elusive kind of a term that no single definition can cover it up? So F.R. Lucas, at the end of this book, came to the conclusion that he said that this term is fit for slaughter. That in other words, the term of Romanticism and Classicism, they should be abolished from literature, and we should approach literature as a piece of art without dividing it, without categorizing it into the category of Classicism and Romanticism, right? So it's a very elusive kind of a term, right? There are different kinds of factors and different kinds of reasons that resulted into the rise of 19th century Romantic movement in English literature. Let's discuss those factors and reasons one by one. First of all, we are going to discuss a general background to the Romantic movement. In general background, we are going to discuss the influence of some of the philosophers, thinkers of the Europe who influenced the rise of Romantic movement in the beginning of 19th century English literature. One such philosopher and a thinker is Kant, and second one is Schiller. Kant and Schiller gave a philosophy of transcendentalism. This philosophy of transcendentalism really impacted this 19th century Romantic English movement. This really influenced the pioneers of, the starters of 19th century Romantic English movement. Let me tell you what is this transcendentalism. Transcendentalism is a philosophy which believes that the ultimate reality and the final reality lies beyond the world of five senses. The world of five senses only reveals the fake realities, the artificial realities, and real realities are beyond the curtains of, beyond the boundaries of senses, where the territory of senses comes to an end. From that point onwards begins the world of transcendentalism, and there lies the ultimate reality, the final reality. This concept of transcendentalism by Kant and Schiller greatly impacted the pioneers of 19th century Romantic English movement. Basically, 19th century Romantic English movement was initiated by two great literary personalities of 19th century. One was William Wordsworth, second one was Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Both of them, they came under the influence of transcendentalism of Kant and Schiller. As a result of that, they started off this movement. And if you see the poetry of William Wordsworth and Coleridge, you'll feel that there is the clear-cut influence of transcendentalism. Over there, Wordsworth and Coleridge, in their poetry, they talk about the ultimate reality, which lies beyond the world of five senses. So this is one such influence upon the rise of 19th century Romantic English movement. Second important factor or influence is related to French thinker and philosopher Rousseau. Rousseau was another important personality, a thinker and a European philosopher, a French philosopher, who gave certain slogans that resulted into the rise of 19th century Romantic movement in English literature. Rousseau gave us a concept of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And the second concept that was given by Rousseau was return to nature. He believed that there is only one way to get rid of the social ills and problems of the society, by returning to nature and by having liberty, equality, and justice in our society. So this resulted into the rise of Romantic movement in 19th century England. The next important personality that influenced the rise of Romantic movement in 19th century was Godwin. Godwin was a political personality. He wrote a book, and the name of that book was An Inquiry Concerning Political Justice. In this book, he revolted against religion, morality, social norms, customs and conventions, and all these things. And these, rebellions of Godwin against these institutions greatly impacted the rise of 19th century Romantic English movement. So this is general background to Romantic movement. Then there is a literary background that influenced the rise of Romantic movement in 19th century English literature. And in the literary background, one such literary factor that resulted into the rise of Romantic movement was Neoclassicism of 18th century, or in other words, the Neoclassicism of Alexander Pope and John Dryden. This really initiated Romantic movement in the beginning of 19th century English literature. Alexander Pope and Dryden wrote a type of poetry in which they greatly stressed upon form of poetry, discipline in the poetry, and balance in the poetry. They also believed that ancient classics of ancient Rome and ancient Greece, they must be followed in the writing of poetry. And all the romantics who initiated Romantic movement in the beginning of 19th century, they rebelled against all these laws, all these rules and regulations of Alexander Pope and John Dryden. In other words, they rebelled against Neoclassicism of 18th century and produced a kind of a literature which was altogether different from Neoclassical type of literature, and it later on came to be called as Romantic literature. So this is one of the literary reasons for the rise of Romantic movement. Second important literary factor was that of German poet Goethe and Schelling. Both of them, as poets, German poets, impacted the rise of 19th century Romantic movement. Their Romanticism, their Romantic ideals, the way they composed their Romantic poetry greatly inspired 19th century Romantic writers and resulted into the rise of Romantic movement in the beginning of 19th century English literature. So these are some of the factors, some of the reasons that influenced an all-important movement, the rise of an all-important movement in the form of Romanticism or Romantic movement in English literature. This is it for today. I hope today's lecture would be quite beneficial to you. Thank you very, very much. Allah Hafiz.